Hello, my crafting friends. If you like budget-friendly primitive home decor DIYs that's perfect to decorate after the 4th of July and into late summer, early fall, then come craft with me. My name is Sarah, and welcome to my channel, Primrose Lane Prims. If you haven't done so already, I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button and crafting with me again in the future. And now let's jump right into these DIYs. So for today's DIYs, you're going to see the common theme is going to be bees. That's right, we're going to be making a lot of primitive rustic bee crafts in this video. And this first one, I want to make some little beehive bowl fillers or ornaments. And I'm just going to start off by taking half of a piece of cardstock, folding in half again, and cutting out a little pattern in the shape of a beehive. Now I'm going to take my Waverly Fat Quarter here in the color yellow and this little bee fabric that I found at Dollar Tree. Walmart actually also has some bee fabric that's really cute as well. And I'm going to cut out 2 beehives in the bee pattern and 2 in the yellow fabric. I folded both of these fabrics over, so I cut out both sides at once. Now for the bee fabric, once they're cut out, I'm going to flip them over so that the right sides are facing out. And I'm going to do these no-sew. We're going to do a little bit of combination of no-sew and sew in this video, so you can see the different ways that you can do things, whether you're somebody who sews or not. Now for these, like I said, they're going to be no-sew, so I'm just going to take my glue gun and I'm just going to run a strip of glue right along the edges of my little beehive here, all the way down on both sides. I'm going to leave the bottom open though for right now so that we can stuff these. Just make sure you've got those edges pressed really firmly into that glue so that glue sets. You can use regular hot glue or you can use the fabric hot glue. Either one works. The fabric hot glue might be a little better hold, but I usually most of the time just use the regular hot glue because that's what I have on hand. Now once I have these cut out, I'm going to stuff them. And once they're fully stuffed, I'm just going to tuck all of my stuffing in there, and I'm going to add a strip of hot glue to half of the bottom. I'm going to do half at a time here to close this up. That way I can make sure it gets pressed down really firm, have a nice little edge there. Now for the other side, and finish sealing these little beehives up. And I'll do that to all 4. These would be super easy to pop on a sewing machine as well, or even hand stitch. But I'm going to just kind of rough those edges up a little bit of the fabric. I want the edge of the fabric to have a little bit of fray. And since I want these to be primitive and rustic, I'm going to take some of my Waverly Antique Wax and I'm going to start dry brushing it all along my little beehives here. I really dab off a lot, kind of the excess here. I want this a really light amount. And your amount of distressing and grunging, that really, it's personal preference. If you don't like it at all, you can completely skip this step. Now I want to add a little bit more, so I'm going to take my cinnamon, my ground cinnamon here, and I'm going to sprinkle my little beehives here with the cinnamon and take my finger and rub that down into that fabric really good. These make these smell really nice, but they also just add another little layer of grunging that really gives these some really pretty rustic charm. Now, once these are grunged to my liking, I'm going to take my thinner jute twine here and I'm going to wrap it around the little bottom indentation of my little beehive here and tie it in a knot in the back. Then wrap it around that top indentation as well. Then bring it back down in the back and tie it off right where I originally tied the knot. So it'll crisscross a little in the back, as you can see here, but the front will just have the 2 lines of twine going along the 2 levels of our little beehive. Now I want to add a little tag, and I'm just going to take one of my little small paper tags off Amazon. This is where I get these off Amazon. And I'm just going to write "Be Happy" in my fine tip Sharpie marker, and I'm going to crumple it up. I want to give this a little distressing as well to make it match the rest of the piece. and use my antique wax to go around the edges and over the top just to give it that nice rustic look. You could use your distress ink or whatever it is you have on hand that you like to distress with. My antique wax is just my go-to. So I'm going to take and tie a little shoestring bow here out of my thinner jute twine. Add a little hot glue to the back of my tag, put it right in the center of my little beehive, and then glue my little bow right over top the hole in my tag. And here these are. These turn out so cute. They're so easy and budget friendly to make. You could add a hanger on the back and put them on like a little pencil tree or add them to a dough bowl. They turn out so sweet. But this next DIY, I'm actually going to reuse a pattern. If you saw a couple weeks ago, I made an primitive Uncle Sam doll, and I'm going to reuse the same body pattern that I used for that Uncle Sam doll for this one, except I need some arms and legs because we're going to be making a little rustic primitive bee doll. So I'm just going to take here in a piece of cardstock and draw out an arm, kind of measure how big I would want it to be compared to my body pattern. And then I'm also going to draw out a leg. I want my leg to be a little longer, kind of curl here at the bottom a little bit. And these are about 1.5 inches in width too. And all of the patterns I've hand drawn today, I'm going to link in the description box. I'll put them in there. If you want to print them out and use mine, you can. If you want to hand draw yours, then you could do that as well. But I will put these down there just in case you would want to see them. Now I'm going to grab another one of these fat quarters here from Walmart. This is just the black color, black blah, 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 tongue-tied. Oh my goodness. This is just black fabric, plain black fabric. And I'm going to lay out my patterns on these. I'm going to cut out 2 arms and 2 legs. And I just use my chalk pen to trace these onto my fabric and cut them out. Now you could do these no-sew, or you could do like I'm doing and pop them on a sewing machine and just stitch up around the edges. I've used white thread in this so you could see a little bit better. The black thread is so hard to see, especially on camera. So that's why I use the white thread. So I just stitched up all of my arms and legs, leaving the top open so that we can stuff these. And then I'm going to turn these inside out. And once again, now with this, if you are going to do the no sew, I would probably use the fabric glue. It gives a little better hold on this slightly silkier material. Like when you're using a drop cloth or burlap, regular hot glue works perfect. But with these little arms and legs, you might put a little more pressure on the seams here when you're turning them inside out, and it's easier to bust through them. So I would probably use the fabric hot glue if I was going the no sew method on these. So I'm going to stuff my little arms and legs, and I'm going to use a little pencil, something here to get that down in these really good, especially these little feet where you kind of really got to push it down there to get in there. And once they're done, this is what they are going to look like. So I popped them back on my machine once I had them stuffed and just sealed off the top of those to hold that stuffing in. And there's about close to a 1/2 inch of overhang fabric. And that's what we're going to need here to attach these. So I'm just kind of deciding on the body here where I want the arms, and I'm pinning it so that it stays in place when I sew it. But when I sew, I'm going to leave space there where I wanted my arms. So right here on each of the sides, I'm going to leave about 1 inch or so right here where I'm not going to sew it so that I can attach my arms. So now that the body is sewn up, see, I left the bottom open here so we can turn it inside out or right side out. And I left these little armholes open as well. Flip that around. I'm going to grab my little stick, or it's actually my little stick that's for adding polyfiber fill-in, but I use it for kind of all kinds of stuff, including popping out those edges. So I'm going to add my little arm right in that hole that I left open. And I am going to grab a needle and thread here to sew these up. This is only, like I said, about an inch wide. And I'm going to go in, I've doubled up my thread. So I'll put a stitch through, double my thread over on itself, tuck that tail down in, and I'm just going to use a ladder stitch to sew these up. And with the ladder stitch, you just go in, you go straight across, add another stitch, moving forward, and you want to stick that inner edge of your fabric there where it's tucked under. Then you'll go straight back across, except with the arms, when you go straight back across, you'll go through the arm as well. So it'll go through the arm, stitch forward, back straight across, just like a rung of a ladder, through the arm, stitch through that other side of fabric, moving forward just a little bit, stitch back straight across through the arm once again, and just continue doing this. This little ladder stitch is perfect. Once you pull this shut, you won't see the seam. It secures the arm on there, and this isn't actually sped up. This is real time how long it took me to do that, which you can see really wasn't that long. Once I get to the end, I will just I'm going to take and put my needle through the seam into the inside of my doll, where I can then tie it off and cut it off on the inside so that all the tails of my thread are on the inside of the doll. And friends, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to drop down and hit that like button. Also, if you haven't done so already, I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button. It's completely free. I would love to have you join me again in the future. And also, there's a little feature called Hype. You've probably seen it on mobile devices. It's another free way to support creators. If you're enjoying the video, I hope you'll consider hitting that Hype button. It just lets YouTube know that you enjoyed the video and to share my channel and my video with maybe more friends that have not seen my videos yet. And as always, I appreciate each and every one of you. So here's our little doll, both arms sewn in. And now I'm going to stuff the body. And you might be saying, Sarah, this does not look like a bee right now, but just trust the process, it will. This just basic shape here, you could actually make into a variety of different types of dolls. But now once it's stuffed here on the bottom, I'm going to tuck that edge under. I want a nice finished edge, so I'm going to tuck it under. I'm going to add where I want one of my legs, and then I'm going to take just one of my little straight pins and I'm going to pin my leg where I want it to be. That way it will stay put until I get it stitched in. Now add my other one. Just play around, find the place that looks good. I want my little feet kind of facing out from each other. And then just pin that in. Now on the top, I'll tuck that end of this fabric here on the inside as well. And then I'll stitch it like so, so it'll have a nice finished edge. And I'm going to stitch this with a ladder stitch the same as I did with the arms. Put a stitch in, loop my thread over itself, go straight across like a ladder run, stitch forward just a little bit, straight back across, stitch forward, and then here as I get to the legs, when I go my stitch straight across, I'll put it just through the leg as well. Just be sure when you're doing these to not forget to pull your little straight pin out before you completely seal it up. That way you don't want to leave the pins on the inside of your little doll. So once you've got the legs stitched where it's not going to move on you, be sure to pull that pin out of there. And I'm just going to continue to do this all the way across, then tie off the end and snip off my thread. And that's the body of the doll made. Easy peasy. Now let's make it look like a bee. I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint and the color Maize. And I want to paint a face here on it. And I'm going to start off doing a just kind of heart shape here at the top. Just going to keep bringing that down once I get this little, kind of like the top of a heart at the top of his face. Bring it down and just round it off on the bottom right above the little shoulders. Just round it around there. And then just fill in the middle. Now we need to add some stripes for our little bee, because what's a little bee without its stripes? So I'm going to go right below where the little shoulders end or start, I guess. And just with the width of my brush, I'm just going to start running lines all across the body of my little bee. And when I go across, the paint will fade out on the brush some. I'll add some more, but if you have some sections that are lighter than others, that's okay, because I want this to have a little bit of faded look in places. It's rustic, it's primitive, you know, it's old looking. So having certain sections that are a little more faded than others is exactly what we want. So I'm just going to keep adding my little bee stripes all the way down the body. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to a couple little darker spots here or there. Like I said, I want it to look like some sections are more faded than others. Some have more color than others, just to help add to that aged primitive look. And I'm going to flip over my little bee here and I'm going to continue the stripes right around the back, just where they start there in the front, go around so that it looks like a continuous stripe all the way around its body. Now, friends, I'm going to start actually some of the things I make, not everything I make, but some of the things I make, I am going to start putting up for auction. I am just getting to the point that I'm running out of storage. I've made too much stuff, and as much as I'd love to keep everything, I can't. You can only give away so many things. So some things, if you go over to my Facebook page or my Instagram page, I will be posting over there where and when I will be having auctions. So if anything you see that I make on here is something you might be interested in, then that will be the place to look for when and where I will be having these in the future. So here's our little bee starting to look like a bee. Now for the eyes, I'm going to take these little 3mm safety eyes. I also get these off Amazon, and I'm going to take my wire cutters and just snip the backs off of them so that they're flat on the back. They snip off real easy. That plastic just snaps right off. Add a little hot glue and glue these right here to the top of his little face for the eyes. Little hot glue stringies. Now for the nose, I'm going to grab my needle and thread again here, and this is just some black thread. going to put it through. We're just going to sew a little nose here. Just loop my thread over in itself and make about a quarter of an inch or so stitch and pull it tight and just keep stitching that around to make a little nose for our bee. Snip off of that top little string. Here, when I get done, I'll just tie it off. I'm going to poke it through the doll, go under, and then snip it off. That way the thread is on the inside, that little tail on the inside. Now, of course, we want to add some distressing to our little primitive bee, so I'm going to grab my Waverly Antique Wax and just start dry brushing my wax over top of my beak, give them some nice grunging, and I'm going to go all over, even on the arms and legs and head where the yellow is not. You don't see it as much, but when you're in person, you can tell it's there. And I'm going to hit the seams because I did use that white thread so you could see it better as I was making it. And there are little sections where you can see it. So I'm going to make sure to hit those as well with this wax to hide that thread. I'm going to do this front, back, all over. And then I'm going to go with my ground cinnamon again, and I'm going to give this little bee a sprinkle all over. And I about made a huge mess because I didn't put anything under him while sprinkling. My tablecloth would have been covered in cinnamon. So let's try that again. I'm just going to sprinkle all over real good and then use my fingers to rub that cinnamon down into that fabric. Just give that a little more grunging and make it smell super good. I could tell you when I'm done with the day's projects, my hands smell good with all this cinnamon. Now for our little bee's wings, I'm just going to take some raffia here and I'm just going to loop it over on one side, loop it over on the other till it meets in the middle, tie it off with some twine really tight right there in the center to make a little bow, and that's going to be the wings for our bee. Just tie that down super tight with some twine, trim those little tails off. And I'll fluff my raffia out a little bit here. So you see, I'm just going to use a generous amount of hot glue here. And I'm going to take my bee doll to my wings so that I can make sure they're placed where I want them before I flip it over and really hold that down for a few minutes, make sure that glue sets really good. Now I want to make some clothes for our little bee doll. And I'm just taking this scrap piece of painter's drop cloth that I have. This was just a scrap piece. It's really uneven on the edges. I'm just going to try to trim it up a little better, but it's okay. I want it to be a little uneven. I want it to have that because it's rustic, it's primitive. So I fold it in half and then I'm going to fold it again into quarters here. And in this center corner where it all meets, I'm just going to cut a small cone shape out here. And that's for the body of our little bee to fit through. And I want to grunge up the skirt to match the rest of it. So I'm going to go with my Waverly Antique Wax here, and I'm going to just dry brush this antique wax all over the skirt. You could also tea stain it or coffee stain it. That would be really cute as well. And then, of course, a little bit of cinnamon too, just to add a little extra grunging. And like I said before, if the distressed and grungy look isn't for you, you can just skip those parts. You don't have to do them. It's really, like I always said, personal preference, but we're making primitive here, so we're going to grunge. So I'm going to put my doll through that center hole, and I'm just going to kind of arrange this around. The is definitely bigger around the hole in the center than my doll, and that's okay because I wanted to have like little ruffles. So I'm just going to kind of arrange it so it looks good. Add a little strip of hot glue to the front there and push my drop cloth down in that to hold it. Do the same thing on the back, kind of holds those ruffles where I want it. And then to extra secure it and make it look a little better, we're going to take just some of this thinner jute twine here, and I'm going to wrap it around the top of the skirt a couple times and then tie it off in a bow in the center. I want it to look like this little twine belt is what's holding up the little skirt. Look how cute he's looking. I'm absolutely loving this so far. Now I'm going to grab some of this cream and black gingham homespun fabric. I absolutely love this. This is one of my favorites to use, especially late summer, early fall. And I want to make just a little neck scarf to go on our little bee here because I guess our little bee is going to be a little girl bee. She's going to have a pretty little scarf here. So I'm just going to tie that right around her little neck, tie it off in a knot. And I'm going to leave the tails kind of long there to hang over. And I want to make a little matching pocket on her skirt. So I'm just going to rip off a little square here of the same fabric and decide where I want it on her skirt there. I'll add hot glue to 3 sides of it. Trying to be super careful here and not catch my fingers. Add that right to her little skirt. Now I have some of this dried baby's breath. I just get this at Hobby Lobby, and I'm going to tuck that right down in the little pocket. My little corner there is coming up. I need to add a little bit of hot glue, but I kind of pushed that little bit of baby's breath into the glue that was kind of in the pocket to secure it, and here she is. I love how this turned out. You have to drop me a comment, let me know what you think, and think if you would try one of these. Now for this next DIY, I'm going to upcycle this is actually the inside roll of aluminum foil. My foil ran out last night and I was looking at the roll and I was like, you know what? I can make something out of this. That's one of my favorite sayings. I can make something out of this. So I'm just going to cut off about 2-inch little sections here of this, a paper towel roll, a toilet tissue roll, anything like that would work for this. And I'm going to grab my apple barrel burnt umber paint. I went with the actual burnt umber this time because I needed something a little darker than just my Waverly Antique Wax to cover this cardboard. And I'm going to give these one good coat of this burnt umber. And before that is completely dry, I'm going to go in with my Waverly white chalk paint here in the color Snow White. And I'm just going to start dry brushing on this white right over top. And I wanted the burnt umber to be a little wet still so that these two will kind of blend together a little bit. See, as I keep going over it, they just kind of smear a little bit. And while that paint is still wet, yep, grabbing that cinnamon, we're going to go right over that to really push that in that paint, kind of smear it around. Guys, we're going to use these to make some little cute miniature honey pots. Because I didn't tell you what you're making. You're probably wondering, like, where are you going with this, Sarah? Yes, we're going to make little miniature honey pots. Could sit maybe beside the beetle, set them on a tiered tray or on a shelf. But I need a little sign to go on the front of these little honey pots. So this is just regular old printer paper. I'm just ripping off a couple small pieces here. to make little tags for the front. And I'm going to take my fine tip Sharpie marker and I'm just going to write honey on it. Now I grabbed my brush that I used for the burnt umber. I did not add any extra paint, just whatever was left on that brush. And I just went around those edges because I wanted the edges to be a little darker, those ripped edges, kind of where that paper is frayed a little bit. And I slightly got a little bit in the middle there, got a little too much on that one, wiped it off. I'm going to rub it a little bit in the cinnamon too. I mean, why not? Tags need cinnamon too. Let it stick to that paint a little bit. Now I grabbed my antique wax here and I just rubbed my finger on the lid here. Just got a little bit on my finger and went over the white part, all that was left white on the center of these so that it would give it a more aged look. And grabbing my matte finish Mod Podge, I'm going to give a little coat here to the front, pop my tag right on there, and go over the top again with the Mod Podge. And I'm going to go over just the whole thing as well. And then take that little extra cinnamon there and roll the Mod, well, it's wet with Mod Podge, roll it in that cinnamon, add a little more cinnamon. Almost covered my label up, had to wipe a little bit off. I'm gonna let those dry. And while those are drying, I'm going to grab my black and cream gingham homespun fabric here again, and I'm going to rip little squares. These are going to be for the top because we want these to look like a honey pot that's been covered, the lid's covered with the fabric and maybe tied with some twine. You know what I'm talking about, what the look I'm going for. So I'm going to rip a couple squares there, and then I'm going to grab my cheesecloth. And I'm going to cut this little sewed edge off here, the little finished edge. We don't want that. I want it nice and rustic looking. So I'm going to trim that off. And then I'm going to rip little squares of this cheesecloth, roughly the size of the homespun that I ripped. I get my cheesecloth off of Amazon. It comes in a 4-pack. It's really affordable, really inexpensive. You can get a lot of projects out of them. As always, I leave links for any of the stuff I use that I get off Amazon down in the description box. Now I want to prim up this cheesecloth as well, so I'm just taking my antique wax and lightly going over that cheesecloth so it has that aged look as well. Now once my little foil tubes here are dry, I'm going to take my hot glue and run right over the rims on the top and then pop my black and cream gingham fabric right over top there. See, so it just looks like a jar with a little fabric lid that's covering the, say, canning jar lid or the open pop. Just pop that right on there. I'm going to add a little bit underneath here, right on the sides too, to hold that down, tuck it down. I don't want it completely glued off, but I don't want it sticking out wild either. Now I want to add my cheesecloth right on top of that. I'm just going to arrange it around so that you can see the black and cream peeking out from underneath the cheesecloth, and then just tack that down with a little bit of hot glue on each side, just a dab on the top. Doesn't take much. I'll do the same to this one. And now grabbing my little jute twine, my thinner twine here, I'm just going to hot glue it starting in the back here, and I'm going to wrap my twine around this top so that way it looks like the twine is what's holding on the fabric on the top of our little honey pot. Now I want to tie another little small just shoestring bow here. I'm going to hot glue that right to the front top of our little pot or honey pot, right on top of that twine so that it looks like it's tied off with a bow. Now, the other thing I did is I took my hot glue gun and I made a few little drips of hot glue around the tops there, you can see, and I'm letting these dry. I did them all around. And I'm going to go in with my Waverly Antique Wax here, and I'm just, once they're dry, I'm dabbing that onto those hot glue dabs to darken them up. We're going to make these look like honey. And taking my maize chalk paint again, really light amount on the brush, then I'm going to go over top of those glue dots. Now with the maize to give them that nice darker yellowed look to look like honey dripping out of the top. Look how cute. I think these turned out so adorable for just a little cardboard roll. Trash to treasure. Now for this last DIY, I'm going to use one of these little cones from the Dollar Tree, these styrofoam cones. I actually had one that was broke. It got broke in my craft stash. And I thought, what am I going to do with this? And then I thought, you know what? This is going to make the perfect little miniature beehive. It'll go with our little miniature honey pots. So you can see it's about halfway of the cone if you get one and cut it. And I'm just going to take my craft scissors here. I'm just going to kind of angle this at the top a little bit. Just angle it up so that it kind of comes to a little point there. And then grabbing some rope from the Dollar Tree, I'm going to hot glue it right here at the bottom. And I'm going to start rolling, gluing and rolling this thick rope all the way up and around my little styrofoam here, styrofoam cone. And as I'm doing this, you'll notice I'm kind of lightly twisting this so that it makes the rope coiled a little less tightly, makes it a little wider. Does that make sense? Just slightly. And I'm just going to keep gluing and wrapping until I get to the very top. But before I seal it off, don't want to seal it off completely yet. I've got something else to add. Okay, I'm going to stop here before I completely seal it off. And on the other end, I'm going to cut off a little section of rope. It only took me one of these ropes from Dollar Tree to do this. And I'm just going to cut enough here to make a little loop, little holder hanger at the top. And I'm going to add some hot glue, just kind of tuck the tails under and glue that down. so that I just have a little hanger loop right at the top. Then I'm going to keep wrapping up and around to finish this off. And I actually have a little bit left over. Now I need a little entrance to our beehive, so I'm grabbing my 4-ply thicker jute twine from Walmart here, and I'm just going to kind of measure out roughly a little circle here in the front. And I'm going to glue it down at the bottom first. And just kind of gauge here, play with it to see how big and what looks good. And then add my hot glue to press that twine down in to make my little circle here in the front. Our little hive entrance. Now I decided I wanted this to be a little thicker than just what one section of the twine would do. So I went and I'm adding a second layer of twine on top of the first. I wanted that to have a little more depth so that it looks like it's actually going inside the hive when it's done. It was just too flat with just one section of twine, but two did the trick. Just glued it right on top of the first one. Makes that hole look a little deeper. Now, grabbing my Waverly chalk paint and the color ink, I'm just going to paint the center of that circle black. And there we have our little beehive entrance. Now the bottom's foam here, so I wanted to go ahead and give that a coat of black paint as well to make that look a little more finished, not just like foam sticking out there. And since I want this to be rustic and primitive, we're going to do a little grunging on this as well. So I'm going to take just my black paint here on what's left on my brush, and any of the sections where the rope was slightly separated anywhere, I just kind of tucked a little bit of black paint down in there in between, just here and there. Look like little darker sections. Kind of around the entrance hole here too. And then I'm going to go in with my Waverly Antique Wax, and I'm going to lightly dry brush that over top as well. Then, of course, gotta add a little cinnamon to this one too. We can't leave this one out. So I'm just going to put a little bit of cinnamon, and I forgot the thing underneath. Trying not to make a mess everywhere, and just rub that cinnamon down into that rope. Now I'm grabbing one of these paper tags. These are actually ones from the Dollar Tree. They're a little bigger than the ones I get off Amazon. And I'm just going to write honey. And then I decided I want to write fresh honey because, well, honey out of a hive would be very fresh. So I added the word fresh right above the word honey. And these are a little thicker than my smaller ones, but I still was able to crumple it up there, and then grabbing my antique wax, going along, giving that a little distressing antiquing, making it look aged. And I'm going to tie another little shoestring bow out of the thinner jute twine here. little hot glue to the back of my tag here, and I'm going to glue it right here to the top of my little hive, right under my little hanger, and then put the bow, glue the bow right on top of the little hole. Oops, and throw it down for good measure, and here it is. Good thing these are not easily breakable. Pop this, like I said, in a tiered tray and a dough bowl on a shelf, and there you go. Easy, budget friendly, and perfect for after the 4th of July into late summer and even early fall. That is it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to drop down and hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, I hope you'll consider subscribing. Be sure to follow me on social media. And until next time, God bless and happy crafting.